Be me, lead event architect for Zenith Celebrations, a high-end agency specializing in ultra-luxury galas, weddings, and corporate extravaganzas. I'm known for my meticulous planning, my ability to predict every possible snag, and my unwavering adherence to the rulebook. My career is built on perfect execution. Be not me, Ophelia Thorne, a woman whose family money stretched back generations, her face a regular fixture in society columns. She was hosting her Diamond Jubilee Gala, celebrating some obscure philanthropic anniversary, though everyone knew it was just an excuse for her to demand attention. Entitled, fickle, and utterly convinced that rules were merely suggestions for lesser mortals. Our first consultation felt less like a meeting and more like an interrogation. Ophelia wanted a 20-foot-tall floral sculpture dominating the ballroom. "Miss Thorne," I began, my voice calm and measured. "The Grand Astor Ballroom has a strict 12-foot height restriction for any freestanding structures, for both safety and fire code compliance. We also have concerns about stability given the proposed material." She waved a dismissive hand, a diamond bracelet glinting. "Nonsense. Those rules are for children's parties. My vision demands height. Just make it work, darling. Aren't you supposed to be Zenith's best problem solver?" I calmly presented the Astor Ballroom's fire safety documentation and our agency's liability waivers. She refused to sign anything that acknowledged the restrictions. The floral sculpture was eventually downsized, but the seed of defiance had been sown. She considered safety a trivial detail. Next, Ophelia decided her gala required a touch of the exotic. She wanted live peacocks roaming the Grand Astor Ballroom alongside a small enclosure for capuchin monkeys as a living art installation. "That's an interesting concept, Miss Thorne," I said, trying to keep my face neutral. "However, city ordinances strictly prohibit exotic animals in public indoor venues without extensive permits, specialized handlers, and specific enclosure requirements. Not to mention the welfare concerns for the animals themselves and potential allergic reactions from guests." I presented the relevant city bylaws, a thick stack of papers detailing animal welfare regulations and public health codes. She barely glanced at them. "Regulations are for the uncreative," she declared, her lip curling slightly. "Zenith is supposed to make the impossible possible, find a loophole, or better yet, simply ignore them. What are a few peacocks going to do? Shed a feather?" I explained that the city would shut down the event faster than we could say capuchin. She accused me of being a stick in the mud and lacking vision. The animals were eventually vetoed by the venue management, but Ophelia started making veiled threats about taking her business elsewhere if Zenith couldn't fulfill her artistic requirements. I made a mental note to begin documenting every single interaction, every demand, every refusal, with time-stamped precision. The third incident involved the bar. Ophelia insisted on a liquid gold-themed bar using actual edible gold leaf dissolved into high-end spirits, sourced from her personal alchemist. "Miss Thorne, we can incorporate gold leaf as a garnish." "Absolutely," I explained, presenting samples of cocktails with elegant gold flakes. "But dissolving it directly into the alcohol from an uncertified supplier presents significant health code violations. Our caterers work with licensed, vetted suppliers only. We cannot risk a public health incident." I showed her Zenith's strict supplier policy and the local health department's guidelines regarding food and beverage safety. "Oh, for heaven's sake, you're being pedantic," she scoffed, pushing away the samples. "It's 24-karat gold, darling, not rat poison. My alchemist is a genius. Just tell your caterers to use his concoction. It's part of the experience." I calmly explained the legal ramifications, the potential for guests to become ill, the massive liability Zenith would face. She accused me of being fear-mongering and overly cautious. This was when I knew she wasn't just difficult. She was actively dangerous. Every email, every phone call summary, every meeting minute started piling up in a dedicated, secure folder. My Ophelia Thorne due diligence file was growing thicker by the day. Then came the major incident. 3 days before the Diamond Jubilee Gala, Ophelia called an emergency meeting. "I've had a revelation," she announced, beaming. The gala needs a centerpiece, something truly spectacular. A fountain of Elysium. She unfurled a crude sketch, an elaborate multi-tiered water feature, gushing water, surrounded by synchronized lights and jets. And it will go, she declared, pointing at my carefully prepared floor plans, right here. In the heart of the Orchid Conservatory at the Viridian Botanical Gardens. My heart sank. The Viridian Botanical Gardens Orchid Conservatory was a jewel. A historic glass house, home to rare and delicate flora, an ancient, complex irrigation system, and a strictly controlled ecosystem. There were explicit, ironclad rules: no digging, no heavy installations, no unapproved water features. It was practically sacred ground. Miss Thorne, I said, my voice carefully controlled, that is absolutely impossible. The Orchid Conservatory has extremely fragile, antique irrigation lines running beneath the floor. We have a protected ecosystem here. Any significant installation, especially a water feature of that size, would require months of lead time for structural review, environmental impact assessments, and extensive permitting from the city's historical preservation and parks and recreation departments. It's simply not feasible in 3 days or even 3 months. I presented the conservatory's exhaustive rules and regulations, the clauses in our contract explicitly outlining what was permitted. She didn't listen. She simply looked bored. My vision is paramount, she stated, her voice icy. I've already spoken to the Viridian Gardens director. They were resistant, but I assured them I would handle everything. They understand the importance of my patronage, and you, darling, are making excuses. I reiterated the risks: damage to protected species, a catastrophic flood, the entire conservatory being shut down. I explained the unlikelihood of emergency permits being granted. Ophelia bypassed me entirely. Within hours, my phone rang. It was Mark, Zenith's CEO, his voice tight with barely suppressed panic. What exactly is going on, protagonist? He demanded. Ophelia just called me screaming. She says you're being obstructive, uncooperative, and actively sabotaging her gala. She says you lack vision. Mark, I explained, my patience wearing thin. She wants to install a massive, unpermitted water fountain inside the Orchid Conservatory. It's against every regulation the gardens have. It will destroy priceless plants, and it will very likely flood the entire structure. It's a disaster waiting to happen. She's threatening to pull her entire account, protagonist, he hissed. And not just this gala, but all future events and her entire network. Her family money is immense. We can't afford to lose her. She says you need to make it happen. Mark, this is an ecological hazard and a structural nightmare. It will be shut down by the city. I don't care, protagonist, just facilitate it, find a way. She's already arranged for her artisan friend to come in and do the installation. Just get out of his way and make sure Zenith isn't liable. That's your job now. My job now. I closed my eyes for a moment. This was it. The breaking point. Ophelia, emboldened by the CEO's capitulation, then demanded that the entire gala concept be re-engineered around this fountain of Elysium. All the carefully planned decor, the custom lighting, the sound engineering, all of it was to be scrapped. 3 days before the event, I looked at my desk, piled with documents, contracts, bylaws. My Ophelia Thorne due diligence file now felt less like a safeguard and more like a premonition. This wasn't just a bad decision. This was the specific trigger for the very real, very public, catastrophic failure I had been predicting. My CEO had just ordered me to maliciously comply. From that moment on, I stopped arguing. I went into read-only mode. My focus shifted entirely from prevention to documentation. My master plan began. I meticulously logged every single directive from Ophelia, every email, every text message, every phone call summary. Each time she altered the design for the Fountain of Elysium, I drafted a detailed email summarizing the changes, the associated risks I had previously outlined, and requested her explicit written approval. She always provided it, often with a condescending note attached. I pulled out the Zenith Celebrations standard client contract, specifically highlighting clauses regarding client liability for unapproved venue alterations, environmental damage, and the use of uncertified third-party vendors. I emailed these sections to Ophelia, asking for her acknowledgement that she understood her responsibilities. She signed off without a thought. I focused on her artisan friend, a man named Chad, who arrived with a rusty van and a bewildered expression. He introduced himself as a sculptor of liquid dreams. I discreetly took photographs of his equipment, clearly inadequate for such a delicate environment. I cross-referenced his company online. No permits, no licenses, no insurance. I documented all of this, attaching screenshots to my internal reports. I sent a comprehensive, carefully worded email to the Viridian Botanical Gardens director, CCing Mark, outlining Ophelia's direct instruction to install the unpermitted fountain, my repeated warnings, and her insistence on using her own uncertified contractor. I highlighted that Zenith was proceeding under duress and was explicitly not endorsing or taking responsibility for the installation itself. I asked for written confirmation that this email was received and understood. They too confirmed. The paper trail was flawless. I subtly alerted a contact at the city's Parks and Recreation Department, expressing anonymous concern about an unpermitted, potentially hazardous installation at the Viridian Botanical Gardens, given its historical significance. I provided just enough detail to pique their interest without revealing the full extent of the impending disaster. They promised to keep an eye out. My trap was set. The gala night arrived. The Orchid Conservatory hummed with nervous energy. Ophelia's Fountain of Elysium was an eyesore. It was too large, crudely assembled, and already emitting an alarming, low hum. Its pipes snaked awkwardly across the historic tiled floor, barely concealed. The conservatory staff, usually so proud, looked utterly miserable. Ophelia, resplendent in a gown that cost more than my annual salary, made her grand entrance. The lights dimmed, a spotlight hit the fountain. Chad, the artisan, nervously pressed a button. For a glorious second, nothing happened. Then, with a sickening crack, a pipe directly beneath the top tier of the fountain burst. Not a leak, but a torrent. Water, under immense pressure, erupted upwards and outwards, soaking the rare orchids meticulously arranged nearby. The elegant, synchronized lights around the fountain flickered wildly, then sparked and went dark, plunging that section of the conservatory into a terrifying semi-darkness. Water cascaded down, shorting out electrical connections, flooding the floor in growing pools. A distinct smell of ozone and wet soil filled the air. Guests gasped. Ophelia's face contorted in a mask of pure fury. She scanned the chaotic scene, her eyes locking onto me, standing calmly at the edge of the now-flooding area. "You," she shrieked, her voice cutting through the rising panic. "This is your incompetence. I knew you would sabotage me." Just then, two uniformed city parks and recreation officials, accompanied by a woman in a formal botanical gardens blazer, pushed through the retreating guests. They had been keeping an eye out. "Excuse me," one official announced, his voice booming over the din. "This entire installation is unpermitted and appears to be causing significant damage to a protected historical site. We are immediately shutting down this conservatory for public safety and environmental hazard. Everyone must evacuate." Ophelia rounded on them, still seething. "You can't do that. I am Ophelia Thorne. This is my gala." The official ignored her, gesturing to the escalating flood. "Madam, this is a clear violation. Who authorized this unsanctioned construction?" Ophelia, her eyes blazing, pointed a perfectly manicured finger directly at me. He was responsible for all the arrangements." I met her gaze, utterly unperturbed. I reached into my jacket, producing a slim, waterproof tablet. "Madam, with all due respect," I stated, my voice calm and clear, cutting through the rising murmur of the crowd. "I have meticulously documented every instruction pertaining to this installation, every warning I issued, every directive you provided, every waiver you signed." I turned the tablet towards the city official. "Mr. Peterson, you'll find time-stamped emails here, detailing Miss Thorne's explicit demands for this water feature, overriding our professional advice and the venue's regulations. Here are her written instructions to use her uncertified contractor, Mr. Chadley Thorne, despite our objections." I scrolled through the screen, revealing dozens of emails, signed acknowledgements, and photographs. Here are also the communications with the Viridian Botanical Gardens director, confirming our agency's warnings and Miss Thorne's direct authorization of the work. And here, I said, displaying a particularly damning email, is the specific instruction from Miss Thorne, personally overriding my decision to halt the installation 3 days ago. The city official's face hardened as he read. This entire installation was unpermitted, highly dangerous to a protected historical site, and clearly violated multiple municipal codes. Miss Thorne, you are directly liable. The chaos escalated. Guests were evacuated, murmuring amongst themselves. The flashing lights of news cameras, tipped off by the public shutdown of a high-profile event, began to appear outside the conservatory. Mark, the Zenith CEO, his face ashen, stumbled over to Ophelia, who was now being questioned by the city officials. He looked at my tablet, then at Ophelia, his eyes wide with a dawning horror. "Ophelia, what have you done?" he whispered, but his words were drowned out by the sirens now approaching. The Viridian Botanical Gardens swiftly issued a press release that night, condemning the reckless destruction of protected flora and historical infrastructure and announcing a full investigation. It did not mince words, pointing fingers directly at the client responsible for the unpermitted alterations. Ophelia Thorne was immediately hit with massive fines from the city for environmental damage, unpermitted construction, and multiple safety violations. The immediate cost was astronomical, and that was just the beginning. Zenith Celebrations, armed with my ironclad documentation, immediately terminated their contract with Ophelia Thorne, citing egregious breaches of contract and irreparable damage to our reputation. We swiftly initiated legal action to recover damages, lost revenue, and punitive compensation. My meticulous paper trail saved Zenith from being implicated, turning us from potential defendants into triumphant plaintiffs. Ophelia's name was publicly dragged through the mud, splashed across every society page and local news channel. Her Diamond Jubilee became a public relations nightmare. Update 1. 2 weeks later, the fallout was spectacular. Ophelia's artisan contractor, Chadley Thorne, was indeed revealed to be her nephew, operating his Liquid Dreams business without a single license, permit, or insurance policy. He was facing criminal charges for reckless endangerment and destruction of public property. Ophelia's attempt to deflect blame onto him failed spectacularly when my documentation showed she had explicitly insisted on his services against our advice. Zenith won our lawsuit against Ophelia not just for full damages, but also for a substantial punitive sum. As for me, I received a massive bonus, a public commendation from Mark, and a significant promotion. Update 2. 2 months later, the Viridian Botanical Gardens began the daunting task of restoring the orchid conservatory. The estimated cost for repairs to the antique irrigation system and the replanting of rare, damaged orchids was projected to be in the multi-millions, taking years to complete. A court judgment was handed down, ordering Ophelia Thorne to personally pay a significant portion of these restoration costs. She was officially declared persona non grata in high society, her lavish parties now a distant, ridiculed memory. Her reputation was in tatters, a cautionary tale whispered in gilded halls. Update 3. 6 months later, the news filtered through the grapevine. Ophelia Thorne, abandoned by her fair-weather social circles and facing financial ruin from relentless legal fees and the botanical gardens restoration costs, was forced to sell off several of her ancestral properties at fire sale prices. Her Diamond Jubilee Gala was now universally known as the Great Flood Gala. I, meanwhile, am now the Director of Risk Management at Zenith Celebrations, implementing new, ironclad policies to prevent any future client overreach. My sleep is undisturbed.